What is going on, everyone? My name is Mr. Rage22. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you guys for stopping by again. Today's video, we are talking about something or a topic that I have actually been wanting to make for a while, but I just kept putting it off. But I think now is the perfect time. And yeah, by reading the title, obviously, we're going to be talking about Nintendo's next Switch or Nintendo's next console in general. But let's be honest, it's probably going to be another Nintendo Switch or just a version of Switch. I hope it is. I don't think Nintendo would be able to make any other console after Switch, to be honest, because this is definitely one of Nintendo's best consoles ever. I made a video about Nintendo Switch, talking about how great this thing is, and yeah, the Switch is a great console. It's one of the greatest inventions that Nintendo has ever created. One of their greatest invention, one of their greatest consoles. This thing was perfection. And I really think Nintendo should be capitalizing on how good the Switch is instead of just milking the actual console. Because let's be honest, not only is Nintendo Switch one of the best consoles, but it's also probably one of the most unique consoles as well. I mean, before the Switch, what console was able to basically be two consoles at once? A portable console while also being a standard regular video game console. Just like, one that hooks up to the TV and stuff. Which console was able to do both of those things? Which console was able to be both a standard console while also being a portable console? The Switch is one of the most unique consoles ever created, and one of the best consoles as well, because this thing's capabilities are absolutely amazing. I mean, the fact that we have such high demanding games running on this little machine, it's honestly incredible that Nintendo is even able to make the Switch in the first place. Like, the fact that they made such a small, little, puny console, but it can play games that shouldn't even be on this thing. Games that were designed for next gen consoles and, current gen like Xbox One and PS4. Just such high demanding games running on this small little machine. And you gotta give props to the developers as well. The fact that a developer can make such a high demanding game but then go and take such time and effort to actually make it come to the Switch it's amazing. I talked about this in my Dead by Daylight on Switch rant video because I criticized behavior for making such a garbage port of Nintendo Switch on, making such a garbage port of Dead by Daylight on Switch. Um, and I criticized them for that, obviously, because developers like behavior putting these like half-baked ports on Switch. These are the developers that you do not want to support because these developers have no time or no effort put into these trash ass ports for the Switch. They're terrible because they are just putting their games on Switch to make money because they know that people are going to buy it either way, even if they make a good port or not. So developers like Behavior Interactive, don't support developers like that. But when you have a developer like Techland or Red Barrels or Blooper Team, those are some of my favorite developers. But I know that there are other high demanding games on Switch as well, like World War Z, another great example. You have developers like that who can take a game, such a high demanding game, and actually put so much time, effort, and most of all, love into creating a Switch port. The fact that they put so much time, effort, blood, sweat, and a hell of a lot of money to actually get their game to run on Switch proves that these developers not only care about making money, but they also care about us, the gamers in general. They care for the community and they care for people like us who are so passionate about this hobby and so passionate about gaming. That's why they took so much time and effort and spent so much money and so much blood and sweat to actually get such a high demanding game to run on this small little piece of hardware. Those are the developers that you want to support. But this video is not about that. I'm just giving props to those developers. Nintendo Switch Pro, or just a next gen version of Switch, is something that I feel like we desperately need right now. Because let's be honest, the Nintendo Switch has been out for a while now. I believe this thing came out in 2018, 2017. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I actually don't know, but I know that this thing didn't come out too long ago. And I know it's been out for, a good amount of time, but, like not for as long as Xbox One or PS4. But yeah, this thing has been around for a while, obviously. And the life cycle or the lifespan that Nintendo wants this thing to have is insane. How does Nintendo expect a console that is weaker than PS4 and Xbox One to last for another decade or another 7 years or so when next gen games that are not even coming to Xbox One and PS4 are already coming out. We've already got games that are exclusively coming out only for next gen consoles like PS5 and Series X, obviously, and Series S. So I don't know how Nintendo expects this thing to compete with those other consoles that are going to be getting much bigger games and much better games as well. And I know dumbass Nintendo fanboys will say that, well, Nintendo doesn't want their console to compete with next gen. They don't care about that. Okay, well, that's why this is a problem. See, back in the day when Nintendo only had consoles like the Wii and the N64 and, all those other older Nintendo consoles, back then, it didn't really matter to compete with the other bigger console. I mean, because I'm pretty sure Xbox didn't even exist back then, and the PS2 only existed along with Dreamcast and Sega. So back then, it didn't really matter because Nintendo didn't really have that much competition in the first place, and the little competition that they did have wasn't beating them as much, like it is now. Because let's be honest, Xbox and PlayStation, they're obviously better than Nintendo Switch. Like, there's no doubt about it. The only like the only thing about Switch that makes it better than next gen consoles is its portability. That's pretty much it. You compare Nintendo Switch to Xbox Series X, PS5, and those two consoles knocked Nintendo Switch out of the water. So now Nintendo actually has competition. That's my point. The fact that Nintendo now actually has some serious competition in the gaming industry is why I think they need to make a next gen version of Switch. Because you've got games coming out that are not even coming to PS4 and Xbox One. Like, developers are starting to make much bigger games and much more highly demanding games that obviously need much better hardware, better than what the PS4 and Xbox One is offering. And obviously, these games are not going to be able to come to Nintendo Switch. Sure, people will say that, other great games that were on Xbox One and PS4 will eventually get ported to Switch and those will hold it over. No, it's not. It's good that we got great games like Dying Light and, World War Z, and now we're getting a couple more great titles that were on Xbox One and PS4. It's good that we're getting those games on Switch, but here's the thing. Although I definitely give a lot of thanks for the developers that actually take so much time and effort to get such a high demanding game to run on Switch, I love those developers. Don't get me wrong. I love these developers to death because these are not just people who want to make money. They care for us. Not only do they care for gamers, but they care for people who only have Nintendo Switch, because obviously Nintendo Switch is also one of the most affordable consoles right now because it's only $299. So these developers, they care for us. They truly care for us, because if they didn't care as much for us as they did, then they wouldn't have put so much time and effort into making the ports of their highly demanding games so extremely good. Because the fact that these games actually run decently on Switch at a decent frame rate and have decent graphics, that proves that these developers actually care for us, because why else do they put so much time, effort, and love into that high demanding port that they just put on Switch? Another great thing about having a Switch Pro would actually kind of eliminate that. Developers will not have to work as hard to actually get their games on this portable console. So if Nintendo would just make a next gen version of the Nintendo Switch, that would obviously be a whole lot better. Not only for the developers, because like not only would it be making it easier for the developers, but it would be better for us as well. Because let's be honest, guys, there are some games out there that not even great developers like Techland are going to be able to actually port to the Switch. There are games out there that can't even run on PS4 and Xbox One. So if they can't run on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, there's no way they're going to be able to get that to run on Nintendo Switch. Because if they had too much trouble porting it to PS4 and Xbox One, let's be honest, they're not going to be able to get it on Switch. And one thing that actually is starting to worry me is this cloud gaming bullshit that they have on Switch. I cannot stand the idea of developers using cloud gaming as a way to put their games on Switch, because this is a very lazy attempt to get a game to run on Switch. And cloud gaming it's bad in general. Like, even on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, or even next gen PS5 and Series X, I cannot stand the idea of cloud gaming. Because with cloud gaming, you essentially don't even own the game. Like, when you buy a digital game, you don't even own it then. But with cloud gaming, we're losing even more ownership of our games, because when you buy a digital game, you don't even actually own that game. Yes, it's in your library. Yes, you can play it whenever you want, but it's only there for as long as the developers or the company wants it to be there. There has been plenty of examples of digital games being removed from digital markets, like the PlayStation Store and even the Microsoft Store and even the Nintendo Store. Hell, Nintendo Wii's Wii Shop, it's closed down for God's sake. So with cloud gaming, you're essentially losing even more ownership of the games that you purchase. So I cannot stand the idea of cloud gaming, and unfortunately, that's already starting to happen with Switch. Dying Light 2, a very highly demanding game that requires a very powerful hardware system. That game is on Switch, but it's not actually being ported to Switch to actually run on the console's hardware. It's being put on there through cloud gaming, and this is already a bad thing. I do not want cloud gaming to be like the new way that developers put their high demanding games on Switch, because that would just be horrible. And again, this is why we need a next gen version of Nintendo Switch, because if Nintendo actually made a next gen version of Switch that was as equal powerful as PS5 and Series X, PlayStation and Xbox would be doomed. If Nintendo made a version of the Switch that had much better capabilities, much better hardware, that could actually have games running at a higher frame rate with higher graphics, etc., etc., PlayStation and Xbox would literally be doomed, because the fact that Nintendo Switch is getting old and the fact that, those bigger games out there like Call of Duty are not on Switch, this thing is still selling like hotcakes. The Switch is still one of the best selling consoles right now. So, that proves that people are still going to buy a Switch even years after its release, and they're already doing that right now. Obviously, it's still such a like such a great console. It's still selling so much. But imagine if Nintendo made an even better console than the Switch. Nintendo would be one of the most successful gaming companies ever, because not only would they be creating a fantastic console, but they would be making so much more money, and they would have such better games come to their platform. I don't understand why Nintendo is so obsessed with just keeping Nintendo Switch. I understand that it's a great console and it's one of Nintendo's best console in years, but that doesn't mean that they have to keep this thing around for so long. We need a Nintendo Switch Pro, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't know if it's going to be called Pro. I mean, who said it was going to be called Pro? Whatever they're going to call it, we need a next-gen version of the Switch. And I don't give a shit what all you dumbass Nintendo fanboys say. Nintendo fanboys can say whatever they want, but excuses are not fact, okay? An excuse can be extremely, extremely further away from a fact. Because that's just it. An excuse is not a fact, okay? And Nintendo fans can make all the excuses they want, but we need a Nintendo Switch Pro, because this thing is not going to survive next gen. Yes, we can get ports of great games that came out in the past, but that's not going to hold the Switch over for long. Eventually, people are wanting to play better games, and they are going to want to play better games on their Switch, but they can't. And then they're just going to go out and buy another console, or they're just going to move to PC. Now, if Nintendo made a Nintendo Switch Pro, people wouldn't need to do that anymore. People can buy a next-gen version of Switch that can support 60 frames per second, have much better graphics, and can run much bigger, high-demanding games. And there are plenty of games that I actually wanted on Nintendo Switch that unfortunately cannot come on, Nintendo Switch, obviously, because of its hardware. I mean, just for an example, I could show you guys a couple games right now. These are some next-gen horror games, right? These games, I wanted so many of these games to come on Switch so bad. This game is a perfect example right here. This game, see right here, the Medium. This is a great survival / psychological horror game, and this game couldn't even come to PS4 and Xbox One. Okay, this game is only for PS5, Series X, and PC, obviously. If there was a Nintendo Switch Pro that can support 60 frames per second and better graphics and have better performance, this game could have actually probably came to the Nintendo Switch Pro if it even existed. Another game that I wanted on Switch but couldn't come on there is Alan Wake Remastered. This is another game I wanted to come to Switch, but unfortunately it couldn't because of its hardware. And there are actual games out there, ports of games like this one over here, the Sinking City. This game is on Switch, but since this is such a big game, the port that is on Switch is horrible. And that's not even the developer's fault. This game is open world, and the graphics are super good. So obviously, they had to downgrade this game to the point on Switch where it doesn't even look good anymore. So there are plenty of reasons to want a Switch Pro. We would have much better games on Switch. and we will be able to have much better high demanding games. And not only that, but even better graphics. I mean, who wouldn't want a Nintendo Switch console that has better graphics and better frame rate and has much better performance? I don't understand. Nintendo fanboys defending Nintendo not wanting to make a Switch Pro is pathetic. I mean, you guys are defending Nintendo even though it's bad for you as well. You're defending Nintendo even though you could probably have a better console. You could have a better console, but you still gotta defend Nintendo. Because obviously, this is Nintendo's fault. Nintendo could make a Switch Pro or a next gen Switch right now if they want to, but for some reason they don't. I don't understand why. And for anyone who thinks that, maybe it's in development, like maybe Nintendo is secretly creating it, Nintendo has came out a bunch of times and said that they are not making a next gen version of the Switch. So I doubt Nintendo would even lie to us. And I heard that there was this big Nintendo hacker going around, like hacking into Nintendo's files, like, seeing what they're working on. For any Nintendo hackers out there, please see if Nintendo is making a Switch Pro or just making anything, because man, Nintendo hasn't had anything interesting come out in the past couple years anyways. I mean, Switch OLED was a huge failure and a huge disappointment. Yes, it's still sold, and yes, dumbasses still brought it, but just because a bunch of dumbasses brought an inferior product from an inferior company like Nintendo, that doesn't mean it's good. And the reason I'm calling Nintendo inferior is because Nintendo can be better. That's why I'm so pissed off. It's the fact that Nintendo could be better. They could create a console that can literally knock out Xbox Series X and PS5 and even PC. And for anyone who thinks that maybe there's no such thing as a Switch Pro because it's impossible to make, look at Steam Deck. Speaking of PC and Steam, look at Steam Deck. The thing can support 60 frames per second, has much better frame rate, and has much better performance. If fucking Steam can make a more powerful handheld console than Nintendo, you know damn well that Nintendo could also do it. And Nintendo could probably make it better. Nintendo could probably make it better because Nintendo Switch, although it's kind of a weak console, this thing is actually pretty damn powerful. It's powerful because you see ports like Dying Light and World War Z and other great ports of games, high demanding games that have no business being on Switch because of how high demanding they are, like Doom Eternal. That's another great example. Doom Eternal, Dying Light, World War Z. All these games are very high demanding of the hardware that they're put on, and yet these developers were able to put it on Switch. But it's not just because of the developers, it's because Switch is a lot more powerful than people seem to realize. So if Nintendo can make a powerful console like Switch, a console that's already, decently powerful, they could definitely make a version of Switch that's even more powerful than the regular Nintendo Switch. And that's what pisses me off. It's Nintendo's potential. It's their potential that they could be better, but they choose not to. So yeah, guys, that's why I think we need a Nintendo Switch Pro or just a next-gen version of Switch. We would be getting much better games. We'd have a much more powerful console. And, even Nintendo's games, like, even Nintendo's exclusives would be better on a Switch Pro, which is obvious. So, yeah, guys, thanks so much for watching. I might make another video talking about what I want for Switch Pro because I do have quite a long wish list for Switch Pro. There is quite a lot of things that I want Switch Pro to have, or just like the next gen version of Switch. Like there's lots of things that I want to have. So if you guys want to see me make a Nintendo Switch Pro wish list, then definitely let me know down in the comments and I'll be sure to make one because I love you guys to hear what I have to say for Switch Pro because my wish list is actually kind of a unique wish list. There's a lot of unique things that I want Switch Pro to have. So, I'm sure you guys will be interested in seeing that. But anyways, guys, before I go, I'd like to make a shout out to M64Bos. As you guys know, he is a huge Nintendo fan on YouTube, so I would actually like him to do a reaction video to this because I want I want an actual respectful Nintendo fan to hear what I have to say about, me wanting a Switch Pro because obviously M64 is not one of those dumbass delusional Nintendo fanboys, So I want an actual Nintendo fan, like a genuine Nintendo fan who's not delusional to actually hear about my opinion about Switch Pro. So and another thing, M64Bos actually said in one of his videos that he does not want a Switch Pro, and I can't understand why. Like, M64, if you're watching this, why would you not want a Switch Pro? I don't understand that one. But anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know. Do you think we need a Switch Pro, or do you think the Switch can hold up? Personally, I don't think the Switch is going to be able to hold up for long. Eventually, people are going to want to play better games, and eventually people are going to give up on Switch if Nintendo doesn't make a move, okay? This is no longer the 1950s or just the 90s where Nintendo can just have that marketing thing where they don't care about being competitive with the other consoles in the market. This is a different generation and a different era that we are living in. Okay, gaming is very big right now, and we need better and bigger consoles. And Nintendo Switch, it's not gonna hold up. I'm sorry, but it's not. Okay, as much as we get great ports for the Switch, it's not gonna hold up, guys, and you know it's not. So, anyways, guys, once again, thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end of this video and if you watched the whole thing, thank you so very much for actually sticking by and hearing what I have to say. I appreciate you very much for hearing my opinion and hearing what I have to say. And yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below. What do you think about this whole topic? And do you think we need a Switch Pro? But anyways, guys, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel for more content. I'll be making more videos like this very soon. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out, guys. This was Mr. Rage 22 signing off. Bye bye, guys.